Students, so today's topic of discussion is type of forces. You already know that is whenever there is interaction between the two objects, the force comes into play, and on the basis of interaction, the forces are classified into two categories, and these two categories are contact forces, and the second category is non-contact forces. Now, contact means whenever there is direct contact between the surfaces of the two objects. For example, if I have written this word contact, then there is a contact between the tip of this pen and the page. If I'll put my pen just at a distance from the page, am I able to write on the page? No, because to write on the page I have to put the nib in contact with the surface of this page. Okay, so contact forces are those type of forces in which there is a direct contact between the surfaces of two objects. Similarly, the opposite of contact forces is non-contact forces. Non-contact forces means whenever there is no direct contact between the two surfaces of an object is required. Means if the two bodies are lying at a distance, then these forces comes into play. That's why these forces are also known as action at a distance forces. Action at a distance means ki they will do their work from a distance. We will discuss different type of forces later. Now, so today we will discuss these two type of forces because further contact forces are having different types and non-contact forces are of different types. Okay, so firstly let us move towards the contact forces. Now there are so many examples of contact forces, but the simplest one are like muscular force, frictional force, air resistance. Okay, now we will discuss these forces one by one. Now firstly let us move towards the muscular force. Now there are so many activities or you can say that the maximum activities in your day-to-day life are related with this force, which is known as the muscular force. For example, you are writing on the page, so here you are holding the pen in your hand. Okay, similarly you are if you are playing a football, then if you kick the football, in the case muscular force is used. If you are pulling something, if you are pushing something, if you are holding something, okay, if you are carrying something either on your head or on your shoulder. Similarly, if you are pedaling the bicycle, if you are running, if you are walking. Similarly, if I talk about in case of animals, so animals like horses and camel, they pull the cart, which is known as bullocks, and there are so many other examples. So in all these examples, we are actually using our a force which is known as the muscular force. Now muscular force means you know that in our body muscles are present, and these muscles help us to apply the force. Okay, so all these activities we are using our muscular force. Means the agent of the force in this case is our body, and the type of force is muscular force. Means like I'm holding this pen, so here I'm holding this pen in my hand, and it means ki my hand is applying the force on the pen to keep it or to hold it Okay, so I'm using the muscular force. I'm here my muscles are working here, so that's why this force is known as the muscular force. And you can see here that is to hold this pen, there is a direct contact. There is a contact between the surface of the pen and the surface of my hand. So this type of force is known as the contact force. Let us understand the muscular force as a contact force. For example, I just want to pull or push this object, and if I'll put my hand a little bit at a distance from this object, am I able to pull or push this object? No. What I have to do? I have to come near to this object, and I have to make a contact with the surface of this object. Even in this situation, I will able to either push it or pull it. Okay, only in these two situations I am able to pull it or push it. Okay, so there is a direct contact is required between my hand and this object. So all these this shows that is the muscular force is a type of contact force. Now students, next type of contact force is the frictional force, and I'm just considering the second example also. Next example, that is the air resistance. Why I'm considering these two together? Because if you will find the meaning of these two, so you will get that is the meaning of frictional force and air resistance is same. That is they both will stop the motion of an object. They will oppose the motion of an object. They will decrease the motion of an object. For example, I'm considering this object, and when I push it, after some time it stops. So why this object stops? I have pushed it, and you will find that is after some time it stops. Similarly, during the paddling of a bicycle, if you will stop paddling the bicycle, then what happened? I think after some time the cycle stops. Similarly, if you kick a ball and if you will not kick it again, I think it again after some time the ball comes into rest. Now, why it happens? It happens due to the force which comes into play, and the name of the force is a frictional force. Okay. Similarly, there are many other examples of a friction force, like I have written the word force on this page, or if when the teacher write on the blackboard with the help of chalk. In these two cases, there is friction between the blackboard and if I'll write with the chalk, then the chalk of the particles, and when I'll write on this page, then there is friction between the surface of this page and the ink of this pen, or you can say that the tip of this pen. There is frictional force is existing. If I'll consider one more example, so whenever suppose you are driving a car, and after some time you apply a brake, and applying force, why the car comes into rest? So its answer is again related with the frictional force. Now, what happens when you apply the brakes? When you apply the brakes, this is suppose the ground or the surface, or you can say that it is a road surface is there. Okay, and this is suppose this is the car, and these are the tires of the car which are in contact with this with the road. So the car and the road, and there is a force which is known as the frictional force is existing between the tire of the car and this road. Now let us understand it as, for example, this is the ground, and one object is kept over this ground, and I am applying force on this ground towards this. I'm applying the force on this object towards left side. It means the object moved towards the left side. Okay, and this is a type of unbalanced force because the force is only on one side. So this is the example of unbalanced force, and whenever there is unbalanced force, there is motion in the object. So suppose the object moves towards the left side. Now there is a force between this surface of the object and this ground, and it opposes the motion. Now object is moving towards this side. It means the direction of frictional force is toward kahan ko hogi? The direction of frictional force is opposite. It is acting towards the opposite. If the object is moving towards this side, and the direction of frictional force is opposite to the direction of motion of object. So if it is the direction of motion, then it is the direction of frictional force. So frictional force is always opposite to the direction of motion. Okay, I just consider one more example. Suppose you have to just pass this lane. You have to move from here to here. Okay, you start your journey from here, and you are supposed to be reached at this point. Now initially suppose that there is no one is there and this road is totally empty, then you easily go through this. Okay, now the second case, suppose now there are so many obstacles, there are so many objects in between this path, then what? If when you will go from this point to this point, you have to go through these, and you have continuously have a collision with these objects, and you have continuously change your direction, then lastly you will reach here. So when there is no object lying between your path, then you can go fast, but when there are some obstacles, then you can't go with a very high speed. It means these opposes your motion. So the same work is done by the frictional force. Frictional force is actually opposes the motion. Similarly, the air resistance do the same work. It also opposes the motion. I think many times you have feel whenever there is a very strong storm, means there is wind blowing with a very high speed. When the wind is blowing with a very high speed, in that case it is very difficult to move. Okay. When there is no wind is blowing, means there is normal speed of the wind. In that case we can normally move, but when the wind is moving or wind is blowing very fast, in that case it is very difficult for us to move. So why it happens? Because air applies an opposing force. Air applies a force on us which just decreases our motion. Okay, so in these two cases you you observe that is there must physical contact or a direct contact between the two surfaces is required. So I hope you well understand the meaning of this muscular force, frictional force, and air resistance. Now let us move towards our next type of force, that is non-contact forces. Now next is non-contact forces. Non-contact forces means the forces which produces their effects even when there is no direct contact between the surfaces of two objects. Means they can either attract the object, they can pull the object, they can push the object even when there is no direct contact between the objects, like we are having in the contact forces, in the case of contact forces. Now there are so many examples of the non-contact forces. Now we will discuss one by one. Now first type of non-contact force is gravitational force. Now I just want to explain you what is the gravitational force. Actually, gravitational force is a force which exists between all the objects of the universe, and this force is known as the universal force. This force is also stated by the scientist Isaac Newton. Actually, this force is firstly identified by the scientist Isaac Newton. Now you have observed so many activities in your surrounding, like if you will throw anything in upward direction, then after attaining some height, this object will again come back towards the downward direction. Similarly, if you will find there are fruits which are there are ripe fruits on the trees, and they fell down. So the simple example, that is whenever something goes upward, finally it comes back. Now why it happens? It happens due to the force which is known as the gravitational force. Now what is this force? This force is a force exerted by, because we all are living on the earth, so this is a force which is applied by the earth on all the objects which are lying on the earth. Now according to Isaac Newton, this gravitational force is directly proportional to the product of two masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. I have already explained you the meaning of directly proportional and inversely proportional. Means more are the masses, more is the gravitational force, and if more is the distance between the two objects, देन लेस इज द ग्रेविटेशनल फोर्स. अगर दो ऑब्जेक्ट के बीच में डिस्टेंस ज़्यादा होगा तो इस फोर्स का मैग्नीट्यूड कम होगा, और अगर दो ऑब्जेक्ट के बीच में डिस्टेंस कम होगा तो इस ये फोर्स जो है इट स्ट्रांगली अट्रैक्ट द ऑब्जेक्ट्स टुवर्ड्स ईच अदर. Okay, so this gravitational force directly proportional to product of masses and inversely proportional to square of distance between them. Okay, so this is the earth, and earth attracts all the things towards its surface, and this force is known as the gravitational force. This gravitational force not only exists between the earth and the objects lying on the earth, but it exists between all the objects. For example, this force is also existing between this pen and this notebook. The force is also existing between my hand and this pen, this page, but we are not feeling this force of attraction towards each other. Even if you will consider two persons, then this force also exists between the two persons. Even this force exists between me and this table. Okay, but we are not feeling this force because we all are living on the earth, and the mass of the earth is very, very, very large as compared to the mass of our body. That's why the magnitude of forces between any two objects on this surface is very less as compared to the gravitational force exerted by the earth on all the objects. That's why we will not feel the force or gravitational force which exists between us. Okay, and this gravitational force help us to be to stay on this on the surface of earth. Means we are able to move on the surface of earth, that is due to this gravitational force, because this gravitational force hold us on the surface of earth. So when we throw the object on upward direction, so you can see here that is we are throwing the object in the upward direction. Okay, and after attaining some height it returns back. Why it happens? You can see here that is this is the earth, and I have thrown the object from the surface of the earth in the upward direction. Now the object is lying over here. Then why it returns back? There is no direct contact between the surface of earth and this object. Then why this object returns back? It means for this gravitational force, the direct contact between the earth and this object is not required. It can attract this object without making a contact with this object. That's why this gravitational force is an example of non-contact force. Now student, next type of force is the magnetic force, and you have already studied in your lower classes that is the magnetic force is a force which exists between the magnets, and you have already studied that is if the opposite sides of the two magnets are towards each other, then they attract each other, and if the same poles of the two magnets are towards each other, then they repel. Means the opposite poles attract and the same poles they repel, and each magnet having two poles, north pole and south pole. Every magnet is having two poles, that is north pole and south pole. Now let us understand this magnetic force. Now here I have taken some objects which are made up of iron, and you know that is magnetic objects जो magnets and they will attract the things which are made up of iron. Now here I have considered two magnets, one of small size and one of big size. So let us do the activity. Now firstly I have taken this small magnet and I have just moving this magnet over these nails and this key. So you can see here that is this magnet is able to attract only these two pins towards itself. Now let us see what happens if I'll use this bigger magnet. So you can see here that is this big magnet will attract all the things along with this key towards itself. So from here one observation which you observe, that is there is no direct contact between these pins and this key is required to be attracted towards. If I'll place it just away from the magnet, then the magnet will apply the force on it. Means no direct contact is required. So the magnetic force is known as the non-contact force. And the second observation which you have observed, that is bigger the size of the magnet, more is the magnetic force. So again let's see, the magnet is at a distance, and this magnet is able to attract all these things. So it shows that is magnetic force doesn't require any direct contact between the surfaces of two objects. That's why it is a non-contact force. Now the next type of force is the electric force. Students, you have already studied in your lower classes that is during the formation of electric current, two charges are responsible, that is positive and the negative charges. Similarly, all the objects which are present in our surrounding, like this notebook is there, pen is there, this table is there, magnet is there, key is there, pen and this scissor is there, then all the objects are having the positive and negative charges between them. And when we rub the two objects like my hand and this page, if I rub these two objects, then what happens, there are some objects which are having the tendency to attract or to lose the electrons. Okay, if I'll explain you small and a little bit. Suppose we are having two objects, and here the positive and negative charges are lying in both the objects, positive and negative. 3 positive, 3 negative, and 4 positive, 4 negative. Okay, so what is the electric force? Actually, when we rub these two objects with each other, then what happens, out of these two objects, one is having the capacity, means if it is stronger, suppose it is stronger, then it is having the capacity to attract the negative charge from this weaker object. Now what happens, it will attract all the negative charges in this object, and here we are having this 1 2 3 4 and 3 more electrons come here, so it's negative, negative and negative. Okay, so it will attract all the negative charges from this beaker one, and now there is no negative sign, and you know that in each object, in each nucleus, there are equal number of positive and negative charges. Okay, so in each element, in each object, there are equal number of positive and negative charges. Now all the negative charges are attracted by this strong person. Now what happens, there is empty space left. What happens, positive, positive, positive. Now there are empty spaces between this object, and these empty spaces are known as positive. Okay, so why these are known as positive? Because like in magnets, the same pole they will repel, and the opposite poles they attract. Same here, if there is a positive sign, then they are able to attract the negative sign. So this vacancy is known as the positive, and here all the negative charges are attracted by the stronger. So here negative charge is more, so this body becomes negative whole journal, if we will find the or the average, so it becomes negative and it becomes positive. And when positive charges come nearer to the negative, these two charges attract each other, and when positive comes nearer towards the positive charge, they repel. Similarly, if negative charge come nearer to the negative, then they repel. But if positive charge come nearer to the negative charge, then they attract. Now, so why this happens, how this happens? So whenever the two objects come in contact with one another, then what happens? One object gain the negative charge and second object gain the positive charge. Okay, now let us understand this electric force with the help of an activity. Now, to show the electric forces, I have taken this balloon and some small pieces of different color of pages. Now, what we are supposed to be do, I told you that is electric force means each object are made up of positive and negative charges. So here we are having this cloth, and I have taken this balloon. Now I am going to rub this balloon on this cloth. Okay. After rubbing, if I will move it over these bits of paper. So you can see that is the balloon is able to attract some pieces of these pages. Now, why this balloon attract these bits of paper, small pieces of paper? Because on rubbing, this balloon attain a negative charge, so it will attract the these pages which are having the positive charges. Now let us move towards one more activity in which I have taken this small bottle and on which a straw is kept, and again we are taking this balloon and we are supposed to be rub it on the surface of this towel. Now when I bring this balloon nearer to the this straw, so you can see that there is movement in the straw. There is movement in the straw. Actually, this straw is moving away from the balloon. So here you can see that there is no direct contact between the balloon and the straw. There is a gap between this balloon and the straw. In the activities, you have seen that is on rubbing, the balloon is able to attract the small pieces of pages. Similarly, the balloon is also able to move the straw which is kept on the bottle. So how it happens? Because on rubbing the balloon with any type of cloth, the balloon attains the negative charge, and that's why it is able to attract the small bits of papers and able to just move the straw. So you can do some more other there are so many other activities related with these electric forces, so you can do these activities by yourself also. So if and you have observed in these two activities, that is there is a gap between balloon and bits of paper, and there is a small distance between the balloon and the straw, but still balloon is able to attract the bits of paper, and balloon is able to move the straw, and there is no direct contact between the two objects. So the electric force is an example of your non-contact forces.